Your dog is in the middle of your living room, scooting their butt across your favorite rug like it's a ski slope. You laugh. Maybe you cringe a little. Then later that night you Google it, and what comes back is either it's nothing, don't worry about it, or a list so alarming you start wondering if you need to call an emergency vet at midnight. Nothing in between. No actual explanation of what's happening or how to tell which situation you're in. That gap right there, between nothing and panic, is exactly what I want to fix today. Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Nick Lane, your neighborhood veterinarian, and welcome back to the channel. This is one of the questions I get asked about constantly in clinic, almost always in a slightly embarrassed, lowered voice, like it's a strange or shameful thing to bring up. It isn't. It's one of the most common reasons dogs come in for an exam, and once you understand what's actually happening back there, it stops being mysterious or embarrassing and just becomes something you know how to read. I'm going to walk you through what's really going on when it's genuinely nothing to worry about and exactly when it means you need to get your dog to a vet. Before we go further, let's clear up the assumption almost everyone lands on first, which is that scooting means worms. I understand exactly why that belief is everywhere. It's the explanation most of us grew up hearing, and it gets repeated so often that it feels like established fact. Here's the actual truth. Worms can occasionally cause itching that leads to scooting, but they are, by a wide margin, not the most common cause. The overwhelming majority of scooting cases I see in clinic come down to one specific structure that has nothing to do with parasites at all, and understanding that structure is the key to this entire topic. Your dog has two small glands located just inside the rectum, roughly at the 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock positions if you're picturing a clock face. These are called anal glands, and under normal circumstances, they release a small amount of fluid every time your dog has a firm, well-formed bowel movement, using the pressure of the stool passing through to naturally express themselves. That fluid carries a distinct scent that's actually part of how dogs communicate territory and identity to other dogs. In a normal, healthy situation, you never notice this process happening at all. The problem starts when those glands don't empty properly during a normal bowel movement. This happens for a handful of common reasons. Soft or loose stool doesn't create enough pressure to fully express the glands, so a period of digestive upset can be enough to start the problem. Small and toy breed dogs are more prone to this simply due to their anatomy. Dogs carrying extra weight often have glands that sit in a position that makes natural expression less effective. And some dogs with underlying allergies experience inflammation in that whole area that interferes with normal gland function. When the glands don't empty on their own, the fluid inside builds up, and that buildup creates pressure and itchiness, which is exactly what drives the scooting and dragging behavior you're seeing. If it stops there, this is a relatively minor, very manageable issue. But if full glands go unaddressed for too long, the fluid inside can thicken and become impacted, which is more uncomfortable and starts to escalate the situation. And if an impaction goes untreated further, it can progress into an infection, and in more serious cases, an abscess, which is a painful, swollen pocket that can eventually rupture on its own if it isn't treated. This is the actual progression path, from mild fullness to impaction to infection to abscess, and it's exactly why a behavior that looks silly or minor in its early stages is worth paying real attention to before it moves further down that path. Here is your home check, and I want you doing this the next time you notice the behavior rather than dismissing it. First, take a look at the area directly, in good lighting, and check for any visible swelling, redness, or discharge. A healthy gland area should look completely unremarkable. Second, check whether there's any blood, either directly visible or on surfaces your dog has scooted across, since this is a clear sign that things have progressed beyond simple fullness. Third, think about your dog's recent stool consistency, since a stretch of soft or loose stool is one of the most common triggers and gives you useful context for what's happening. And fourth, take a quick look at fresh stool for small rice-like segments, since that's what tapeworm segments actually look like, and finding them would point toward the less common but real parasite explanation instead. Based on what you find, here's what to actually do. If the area looks completely normal, with no swelling, redness, or discharge, and this appears to be a one-off tied to a recent bout of soft stool, this is very likely a mild, temporary fullness issue that may resolve on its own as normal bowel movements resume. If the scooting is persistent, happening repeatedly over several days, that's worth a vet visit for a professional gland expression, which is a simple, quick procedure done correctly and safely by trained hands. I want to be direct about this part. I don't recommend attempting to express your dog's anal glands yourself at home. It's easy to cause pain or even push fluid in the wrong direction if it's not done correctly, and a professional can also assess whether there's already an infection starting that needs additional treatment. If you noticed any swelling, redness, discharge, or blood during your home check, that warrants a vet visit specifically to check for infection or an early abscess, not just a routine expression. And if you found what looks like rice-like segments in the stool, mention that specifically to your vet as well, since that may need a separate deworming treatment addressed alongside anything else going on. I want to bring this back down to a reasonable level before you start checking your dog's rear end every single day. Occasional scooting, especially right after a stretch of soft stool or an upset stomach, is common and doesn't automatically mean something serious is happening. Plenty of dogs will have their glands naturally resolve on their own as normal, firm bowel movements return. What actually matters is the pattern. A single episode tied to a known stomach upset is very different from repeated scooting over multiple days, or any scooting accompanied by visible swelling, discharge, or blood. Most anal gland issues, when caught at the fullness or impaction stage, are quick and straightforward to resolve, and dogs go right back to their completely normal, comfortable selves once the pressure is relieved. Let's bring this together. Scooting is overwhelmingly caused by full or impacted anal glands, not worms, though worms remain a possible and less common cause worth ruling out. The progression path runs from fullness to impaction to infection to abscess, which is why it's worth attention early rather than dismissing it. Check the area for swelling, redness, discharge, or blood, consider your dog's recent stool consistency, and glance at fresh stool for rice-like segments. A one-off episode tied to soft stool is usually nothing to worry about, but persistent scooting or any visible swelling, discharge, or blood means it's time for a vet visit, and gland expression should always be left to a professional rather than attempted at home. If this video finally answered the question you've been too embarrassed to ask out loud, hit that like button so it reaches more owners wondering the exact same thing. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And tell me in the comments, did you always think it was worms too? I read every single comment. Keep an eye on your dog's rear end the way you would any other part of their body, and always trust your instincts.